G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I've got the video I've been promising on this rifle in front of me, which is chambered in the 300 PRC. Okay, to start off with, I suppose I'll tell the story of why I'm doing a 300 PRC. Generally, I'm come from the old school or the school that would say that any new cartridge, like the 300 PRC or like the many that come out periodically, I would generally wait for 2 to 3 years to see where the cookies crumble, to see where the dust settles. And talking about the fact that it can appear like a really good thing, a new cartridge, but in the long term, whether it actually hits the marketplace, whether it works, how it all set up, any issues, that sort of stuff. So I normally sit back and wait on that side of things. But here I haven't. Here I've gone through and actually used the 300 PRC. Now why did I do that? Well, there's actually a story attached to it. What it comes down to was the one piece in this barrel that, in this rifle that isn't in there from the original equation was the barrel. What this story started with was a gunsmith I use quite regularly, and I should explain that briefly. I am a gunsmith as well, but I'm only a gunsmith by licensing and by building rifles in the where we do machining, and we do a certain amount of it, and we can do all of it, but I am not as experienced at chambering, nor do I have a huge amount of reams or that side of things. So I use I use a few people, but largely Brett Thomson Gunsmithing. He has most of that stuff. I work with him. He does a really good job. He's really well set up to do that sort of stuff. And I'm definitely the type of I don't need to do everything myself. I do myself what I can do best, and other than that, I'll use the best to try and do things. So Brett does a really good job, so that's why I use that. That's why I use Brett. But Brett came to us and said, listen, there's some guys who've just contacted me, new barrel manufacturers in Australia, that would like to get some barrels to me to do some testing. And I thought, this is Brett talking to me, he said, I thought of you, and would you be interested in taking one on? And we'll do some testing, do some videos with it, but do some testing with it, stretch it out, get it out to long distance and see how their barrel works. And I said, yeah, listen, I think that's a good idea. I want to get us a barrel. We can put together some sort of combination and go and use it. And then I instantly on the spot was thinking of what sort of chambers or we could chamber it in to use it in the way of long range shooting to test a new barrel. And I stopped and thought about all the different choices that are there, and really what came to mind was the 300's a good option. But in the way of something that would attract a bit more attention, the 300 PRC works pretty nicely on that score. There was the 300 Norma and the 300 PRC are both sort of pretty hot property. But then went through quickly thinking on the spot once again, the 300 PRC versus the 300 Norma. The 300 Norma needs a lapel bolt face, so there's less actions are going to be able to bolt in there. The 300 PRC uses a normal Magnum or long action chamber or long action. So that is going to work really nicely in the way of being able to put it together in a simple form, and what more people are going to be likely to be able to use because of that lapel bolt face piece. So that's what I chose, the 300 PRC, for that reason. Not long off the phone with him, I thought, listen, a guy that I've really been looking forward to doing something with as well was Gareth over at GCP or GC, Gareth Crook Precision Development. Gareth built this chassis, and listen, Gareth, you've seen a couple of rifles I've had here of his chassis in there and his put together. He's a rifle builder, but chiefly a manufacturer. And Gareth is an interesting character. The reason I like the quality of what he builds, and also like a little bit his story. He's a guy that comes from 17 odd years working in the science / engineering / manufacturing world, where he is, that's where he's cut his teeth, that's his trade, that's what he does. He's a guy who is very, very particular in everything he uses and what he does. He's also an avid hunter. And he actually went from that world, science / engineering, I won't get into the details, but he went from that job to creating his own factory and his own industry or his own business company in manufacturing rifles, largely because he wasn't happy with what he's able to buy. And then he's been able to use, well, what we're looking at in the way of this chassis to be able to build things. And I'll go into a little bit more the detail of it, but really is way into building using the right materials, the right coatings. This is a titanium fore end on here. There's the grade of aluminium, the type of coating. I've forgotten the name of the coating for titanium, but all through it there's bits and pieces where there's a huge amount of attention to detail. And he's certainly a guy, he's not a guy who builds down to a price. He's not trying to find a mass market of getting lots and lots of people into that sort of stuff. He's much more interested in going through borderline extreme quality and going into a very purpose-built world. Still obviously trying to do it in a level that can bring to market, but he's very much about building up to a quality. Anyway, I spoke to Gareth and said, listen, are you interested in doing this? And he said, yeah, let's have a look at it. Let's see what we can come up with. And with a bit of working together, there's some things I changed in the way of making it so it's made to accept my biopod on the front of it. This one doesn't have to be. It can take a biopod on the lower. I've also did some work down the back here with the bag rider and with getting the butt pad up to the height I wanted to be able to make it work like I wanted to do in theory. So those are the details that he said, listen, love to, went into that, he started doing it. We found a long action to do that side of things, all ahead, all smooth sailing, and off we go. Gareth got the chassis to us, we had everything else ready to go, but the manufacturers of the barrel ran into some issues. So their barrel, the whole reason for this build and what came about and the chambering and all the rest of it, we had the ream in, all that sort of stuff, had to get the new ream in, that sort of thing. That's the chamber ream. All the stuff came to pass where everything was here, but the barrel didn't. The barrel had some issues with the barrels and they just weren't ready to go. And we were ready to go. Our season got here. So in the last week, 2 weeks actually, I think, we went through, okay, we've got to get a different barrel, and started having a look and kicking the rocks and see what we could find. Anyone would know in general, in ordering barrels and things from Bartland and from Rock Creek and from a lot of the places, they are on up to 9 months, 12 months wait for barrels, that sort of stuff. So really we're going to look and see what we could find on the floor in the country and sitting on a shelf. And what we found was this, which was a 30-inch Krieger straight parallel. So it was a straight barrel, big bull barrel, 30.16 inches. Millimeters, I can't tell in inches, I haven't got on the top of my head, but big fat barrel that they had there, which was too heavy a barrel for what I thought was right, but listen, it was what we had was an option, 1 in 9 twist in a 30 cal barrel. So, okay, that's perfect. And I went through the process of, this is all the receiver, the front of the stock here is made to accept a big barrel. So all we actually did, what Brett actually did, I didn't do it at all, he chambered it. I have some big custom, I might put them on the store, but I have some big custom brakes that are made to go to a 30 millimeter flange. And it's a big thread. It's a 28 by, a 3/4 by 28 thread in there with a 30 millimeter flange. So this barrel has actually been stepped down, a 1 degree gradient down from the knock where it is full size. 1 degree gradient down, about 5 inches out from there, it comes 1 degree down, and then it's been machined down to 30 millimeters. So that's the reason for the giant barrel. It doesn't need to be that big, but there's no negatives of being that big. There's a little bit of extra weight. I like a little bit of extra weight. In this chassis, it's probably moved as it's set up. The weight balance is, where is the weight balance? So it's there. So it's a little bit forward, but, and we could put probably a heavier bag rider on here and balance it up. But in truth, it's really nice like it is. The chassis set up for more of a moderate weight balance barrel. And I talk about setup because that's exactly how Gareth does his work, really does try and get all the details right. But anyway, the story of this is that the one bit this build started around that barrel, ended up without that barrel, and we probably will get one of those and test it at some stage, but I really wanted to go ahead with all the extra effort that was put into it. So, hats off to Brett with the machining side of things. He did that well, did it in a really fast time for us as well, all trying to work together. So all the machining came up nice. It's a true to action, once again, that Brett had done. And then it's also a bolt knob that's been put on their side of things, which is all set up and done. This is all done by Brett. I've put a Trigger Tech a Trigger Tech trigger in it. It is just the special, so it's just running at just over 1 pound. Works really nicely in this rifle. And then I have one of my big Night Force scopes. So the 7x35 is the first focal plane, this one, but that's set up on here with a little vortex bubble level, which I've come to really like, the bubble level up the top. And I should say, and a air attack base on here, which means that I can get 100 really, but up to 120 minutes of elevation out of this scope, depending on your windage side of things. And then I've got another 70 minutes in the base, and I've got it sitting on a 60-minute rail that's made by Mirage ULR. They make custom rails, so that's why I've ordered custom ones of those. So that's 60 minutes here with up to 120 minutes on top and another 70 minutes in the middle. So this can dial in to 190 minutes. That's the scope. One of our bipods at the front here, like I said, this is, Gareth made the chassis and made it with the ring on the front. I normally am machining and to put on that sort of stuff, but this chassis was made to accept it, so it looks awesome, comes up really good. Like I said, with the muzzle brake, that goes on there to where it's made at 30 millimeters, so all perfect on that score. And back to the back of the stock here, like I said, there's a couple of features Gareth did a little bit different. I think all the base, he does this regularly. He can do this for anyone now. When he builds this sort of stuff, he doesn't just build one, he does all the programming, CNC, so it can be built this way. But he offset the butt pad. Most of his stuff is a bit more tactical in the way of it's a bit more offhand sort of using and that sort of thing, with a lot of, it does military work and semi-automatics and that sort of stuff, and normally has them down a bit lower, a little bit easier on the offhand side of it. I prefer it to be higher because I want the rifle to cycle nice and flat when it fires in its recoil, which is what, if you watch the video of us shooting this thing, which I'll get into in a minute, it does because of that. So that worked really well. It is all really nicely machined and finished, and everything about this is top notch and really a pleasure to use also. One bit I would say that was a little bit, you noticed me cycling the bolt and using that a little bit weird. It actually cycles well, everything worked nicely. It will magazine feed without any problems, that works really well. It's a 5-round magazine in here. I'll list what the magazine is. But there was one bit that out of my little collection of getting the barrel, which Brett had mounted to the action, so that was all ready to go, and he'd also put the muzzle brake on it. I had to spin that off to put it all together, but I then assembled everything, like I said, put the trigger in it, but there's a bit I realised all of a sudden that was missing, and that was the spring for the bolt stop. So the bolt came straight out. So it was something I had to be careful and move slowly, you sort of two hands to pull it out rather than running the bolt back like normal, because that spring was missing. I now have the springs, but I didn't have one. And I picked this rifle up, I put it together, I then made my ammo to suit, so it was only done all on that night, and then we were finished bolting this together. I had bore sighted it, is all I'd actually done. That was at 8 o'clock at night by the time I'd got this thing together and going. We're out at, it was a 4:30 start in the morning to go out and do the shoot that you saw that we're actually shooting at just after, not long after 5 o'clock is where we actually started. So for a bore sight, rush bolt together, not really, there's very simple to bolt together in the way of it all. There's no bedding or any of this sort of stuff. They bolt together and work properly as they are. So, but still, bolted together, made up the ammo. I only got my jump, and I'll do some messing with it. I set up approximately 20 thou. I haven't precisely set it up because I don't know where it's going to be. I'll go through and work all that out. Now I've bedded everything in. And that shot really, really well, really happy. I was actually running the barrel in as we were shooting. And we didn't have good enough vision to be able to see on that target. I've been hit too many times, but as you can see by the group I got to check out on video when I was putting it together for everyone to see, it was really a 1.5-inch group. This thing was shooting at 600 yards, so awesome. And then out to the 2,000 meters, or 2,229 yards. This shot really well. I had to get onto target. I was really working everything out, I was using the lab radar and getting speed readings on that. It was slowly increasing as to what you'd expect. And I've made some comments there also. I deliberately set up loads that were a little bit low. And ultimately, I'm not going to share exact load data with this sort of stuff because of for safety reasons, and I don't want to get too far into it. I know a lot of guys are very capable, but I also know that load data is specific to your rifle and your chamber. But there's also a lot of guys out there that don't know what's going on. So to just give them numbers of it'll shoot like that, that's both not real in the fashion of they don't all perform exactly the same with exactly the same powder load, but also people who are pushing the boundaries can get to when I'm starting to push it. I don't want to be encouraging other people to go there and cause themselves issue. But I started at a fairly mild place, which was 76 grains of what in America is called Rotumbo. What we call over here is AR 225 in a fashion where, and I'm running the 230 grain bullet. And what I'm deliberately doing there is I want to start in a place where I know I'm safe to start off with, but I also am starting in a place with running in the barrel, a little less speed, a little less heat, a little gentler on the barrel, nice to use. I like to use the slower moving bullets, the slower powder, that sort of stuff. Everything's a bit gentler just to help with the lapping in process. In saying that, there's very little carbon coming out of this, very little stuff going on with the lapping, but we did see the normal thing. We saw the speed gradually pick up. I would expect the 230 grains to get into the mid to high, well, at the mid level probably, mid to bottom, I suppose, of the 2900s is what I would expect to see out of the 28-inch barrel. I deliberately chose the 28-inch barrel in a 1 and 9 twist for two reasons. One, I think it's a pretty good barrel length for getting the most out of it. Got to the point where you're getting all of your powder burn and you're not wasting, not getting anything extra by going longer, but you're not losing stuff by coming shorter. So that was one reason. The 1 and 9 twist is so I probably, or hopefully, can get enough speed to be able to run the 250 grain A-tips that are coming into the country soon, but certainly it's a place I know works well with the 230s. And I suppose that's the other thing. Ultimately, I want to be able to do a comparison, proper comparison between my 28-inch 1 and 9 twist on my 300 Win Mag versus the 28-inch 1 and 9 twist in the 300 PRC. And ultimately, we'll probably go with a normal, probably do another one in years to come or time to come with a Lapua bolt face action, and then set up another one and do those tests as well. And what I would expect is probably this is going to be a little bit in front of a 300 Win Mag, and the Lapua, sorry, the Norma is going to be a little bit in front of this. What we actually end up with, the real difference is, I don't think there's going to be a lot in it, but still a nice thing to do in the way of doing that sort of research. And like I said, the real logic behind this was being able to show off a barrel I haven't even got. So besides all that, what the guys that did helped us, Brett did an awesome job. The chassis I'm super wrapped with, you know, it's just really nice. I'll put some really good images on so you can see. It's hard to translate that across. Thank you very much, Gareth. It's an awesome chassis to use, and I hope to do it justice with what we do. So I suppose that's really where we're at. Our next plan, well, apart from putting in the bolt stop spring so I can use it properly, but I'll be stepping up the load. I'm not going to go into details past that point. Like I said, I've started at 76. I am going to go further. Maybe we'll try the H1000 for us, that's the 2217, and try different powders where we're going to go. I definitely want to try and hope to, might be too slow a twist, but I hope to run the 250 grain A-tips in this and see how they run at long range. We'll see how we go with where we stretch it out. Certainly 2,000 metres was the choice because that's the paddocks we've got to shoot in at the moment. But this really is set up to go and do the 3,000, I suppose, is where I think this will be a nice happy place to be able to shoot this to, but go past that point as well in the way of going too far, as always. And I suppose I would also qualify that the likes of, there's a few comments that I've seen in the way of, why wouldn't you use something bigger than that for an ELR project? This isn't an ELR project by itself. This is a 300 PRC in an ELR form. And looks like a good cartridge, seems to work pretty well. You know, like I said, I would still leave the whether I recommend it or not for another place, years to come, or lots of shooting to come. But it certainly is good. It's certainly working well. And I think in general that the logic of the fact that the 300 PRC fitting into a normal action, not needing that lapel bolt face, the fact that you're going to be able to get factory ammo for the thing, I would suspect you'll start to see lots of rifles chambered in it because it has got those things. I think it's probably a winner, but like I said, I'd leave my real call on that until later on. But so far, damn thing's a tack driver, which people like to say. Yeah, well, listen, shooting like that was in the way of the 600 yards in particular, but also the way it was holding out at the long range, even though it was just lapping in the barrel and everything's getting faster. I suppose I should explain that for the people who don't know. There's two main things going on. One is you're polishing your rifling, so the little machine marks and little rough edges and things like that are all getting taken out as the bullet goes down there, so that makes the bullet go down a little bit more efficiently. But the real feature that's going on, which is probably more the speed thing, is that the lands, the little corners in the lands get filled up with a little bit of copper and a little bit of carbon going into them, which actually makes them seal a little bit better. And it means that as the bullet travels down there, it gets a little bit more efficient because of that sealing on it. That will gradually happen over hundreds of rounds. That will generally see tiny subtle nuances or little improvements as it goes. Largely it's done with the fact that we've been through half or 3/4 of a box of ammo doing what we're doing. But listen, awesome so far. Looking forward to using it more. And yeah, I was wrapped with it. Thanks again, Brett. Thanks very much, Gareth. The Night 4 scope on top, my favourite, obviously, but I try and be unbiased, but it's hard, that one. You will see them because I like them and I've got a few of them. Yeah, hope you all enjoyed. Hope that made some sense. Drop any comments or questions you've got down below there, and thanks for checking in on us. We'll catch you next time.
Hi guys, Sam here. For folks that are interested in our products that you will have seen in our videos, these are all products that Mark has designed through our experience in ELR shooting. We manufacture them here ourselves, the likes of our adjustable bag bases, bag riders, bipod systems, muzzle brakes, shot data recording sets, and even our great fun little 22 long rifle target. These are all available in our web store, the links to which are below this video, along with our contact information. And guys, we work hard at putting these videos together, so we appreciate all the help we can get. For those of you who haven't subscribed, don't forget and hit the bell so you get notifications of when our videos come out. It would be awesome to get some financial support. So for those of you who can, you can purchase support bids on our web store, which help us bring these videos to you. Thanks for watching. See you next time.